Thank you, Alicia. Next up is Dan Silva for the Magruder Cluster, followed by Richard Montgomery in Seneca Valley.
Good evening. I'm Dan Silva, a Magruder Cluster Coordinator. And on December 9th, I interviewed Dr. Taylor at our Magruder Town Hall. And while I did ask some tough questions, I wanted to end on a positive note. So my last question was kind of a softball. I asked, what would you like to say to the Magruder community that has felt so neglected for so long to assure them that you have their students' best interests in mind? Rather than something like, of course, I care about your students as much as I do everyone else's, he answered a little defensively and said, well, I'm not going to tell you that you're my #1 CIP priority because you're not. You're my 7th. We're just going to follow the data, which is a claim I've heard many other times. While lacking in empathy, we actually took some solace in his words because if that was true, at least we knew where we stood and could plan to endure, which is why we again felt so betrayed when he recommended option H. Now, you're all well aware that Magruder has the lowest high school FCI at about 0.65, okay? And that your objective rankings prioritize Damascus, Magruder, and then Wooten as 6, 7, and 8. And with only 6 schools included in this CIP ask, this process has pitted these communities against each other, all fighting for the same scraps. And while everybody digs in on the importance of these individual projects, I'm imploring the BOE tonight to take a more holistic, forward-thinking, and equitable approach by looking at these 3 projects as one single problem. And here's why that makes sense. When you look at the list of the top 52 priorities behind me, there isn't a single other high school project, not one. That means if you can find a way to navigate this logjam of overdue high school projects at the top, you have a ton of runway to work through all these much smaller middle and elementary school projects while also working out sustainable holding school solutions before the next batch of high schools are due for replacement. Now, until option H was announced, most of the conversation revolved around how to best utilize Crown. You all vehemently defended your right to use it as a holding school, so we know that's possible. The timelines presented had it being utilized first for Damascus, then Magruder, then Wooten, corresponding with their objective prioritization. With Magruder being completed right on the heels of Damascus, and if MCPS still wants to relocate Wooten to Crown, that means Wooten and Magruder would both move into their long-term homes at the same time. If you decide to rebuild Wooten instead, it can be turned over to the Crown community just 2 years after that. 3 to 4 communities equitably served within 2 to 4 years of each other and the whole region stabilized for decades to come. Instead, the recommendation is to immediately relocate Wooten to Crown. And since there are obviously other considerations beyond the published data, let's consider a comparison of the experience that would create for our students. Wooten students would just pick up their books and head down the street to their new home, somehow bypassing the whole process, skipping from 8th to 1st and avoiding any construction-related disruptions. Damascus would have the added burden of disruptions caused by attending on-site during construction, and Magruder would just be left on the vine to continue rotting. We would not only see another school jumped ahead of us, but necessarily another capital project to repair Wooten. If and when we are eventually added back to the CIP, we would have to endure a longer commute to a holding school further away and in a building deemed no longer suitable for a comprehensive high school. And while we wait indefinitely, Dr. Taylor has explicitly called for a halt of all off-year spending as the rate of our deterioration continues to escalate exponentially. If we do see the benefit of a capital repair, such as our roof in 2029, that will trigger a reevaluation of our FCI, and we could be penalized by moving us even further down the list, as we've already been reminded tonight. As we've also heard tonight, the renovation standards for Wooten as a holding school are lower than that of a comprehensive high school. So our students would be the only ones to have to endure an unnecessarily diminished high school experience for multiple years, while others may use it for 6 months or a year to expedite smaller HVAC and similar projects. Rubber stamping option H dooms Magruder to another decade or more of suffering. To the Magruder community, this recommendation is seen as a politically expedient one, not an equitable one that prioritizes the best interests of the county as a whole. Relocating Wooten or opening Crown as a permanent high school are both irreversible decisions based on long-range projections that remain contested and uncertain. If those projections shift, we could either lose needed future capacity or strain the operating budget with an underutilized school. Using Crown as a holding school preserves flexibility while allowing MCPS to prioritize modernization based on objective FCI data, the clearest measure we have of actual building need. Keeping Crown as a holding school lets the district accelerate projects equitably across the region now while making a more informed long-term decision once enrollment trends are clearer. Lastly, I urge you all to not to let your fiduciary duties cloud your moral obligation to all students in MCPS.
Thank you, Dan.